Hello again, lovely people. Welcome back to our last and final session at Full Circle 2024. I can't believe we're wrapping up the conference already. To everyone in the audience who's been with us through the day and yesterday, and I know there's quite a few of you who've done that. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for being around, for sticking around, and for tuning into all the learning. And for those of you who are just tuning in, you're now joining us for the final session at Full Circle 2024. And for this absolutely exciting final session, I'd like to introduce all of you to Branca Ballott, who is the VP of Marketing at Glide. With all of her experiences scaling marketing teams at companies like Zenefits and GoDaddy, Branca brings a unique perspective to how to build high-performing marketing teams from the ground up. And I don't think this session could be any more perfect to wrap up our conference. We've been, over the last 2 days, we've covered everything from positioning to content creation to measurement and distribution. And now Branca is going to talk us through how to build the team that can actually execute all of this, right? Branca, welcome and thank you so very much for being with us here today.
Thank you. It's been a great conference. Very excited to be here.
All right. And this is, folks, an open conversation with Branca as a final session. No slide decks, no presentations, no videos to watch, just lots of talking with Branca. So keep asking us your questions, and Branca will take them along the way. So I'm going to get us started today with by asking Branca to set some context around, Branca, your own experiences with building marketing teams in previous roles, as well as now more recently at Glide.
Yeah. So I started my career as a mechanical engineer. So I'm not a marketer by training. Then after that, I worked in management consulting and private equity. And I lived in San Francisco for about 10 years and eventually fell into tech. My first job was at Zenefits in sales strategy and operations. The company went through a lot of changes. And then eventually I moved over to run growth marketing. And so growth marketing at the time, we already had a team that was established. And then I grew that team a little bit, but it was a lot of rebuilding a lot of our growth marketing motion. So that was my first introduction to marketing. And it was really understanding all the different levers. And we were doing a lot of paid at the time, website experimentation, thinking about different flows, and a lot of email marketing as well. So that was that experience, which was very intense. And then my second experience with at GoDaddy, I joined to look after one specific sub audience of GoDaddy, web designers and developers. And it's an audience that they knew they already had in their customer base, but they wanted to focus even more on that. So I joined GoDaddy as an individual contributor. And so it was just me. And then eventually we started working with more people from other different teams. And eventually it became a full team with 5 people, 15 people, 30 people, and it ended up getting all the way close to 80 people. So it was very a global team with a lot of different people. And then after that, I decided to join a Series A startup, Glide. So on a very different circumstances than GoDaddy. And when I joined the team, they had 4 marketers, incredible. I was super impressed by how much they were doing. And then have been growing the team since then. And then like thinking about role by role and what would you add. So 3 very different experiences, like inheriting a team, building a team within a large company that is very global. And then now in this like a startup, we're operating on a team of like about 12 people, and just very exciting and different experiences.
Okay, and when you first got on with the team at Glide, who or why did you start hiring?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I was hired to do, build up the team, right? I'll say I know a lot of folks watching are either contractors, consultants, or early stage marketers that might be working on their own. So when I joined here, we had a video person who was also doing education. He's amazing. He's still with us. We had someone who was doing the all around marketer. He was doing email marketing, social media, template store, marketing operations. Like it was like everything, right? We had an amazing developer, a designer, and so it was very good to see kind of like how much that team had created, but I knew that it was not sustainable to have that. And so the first thing that I asked around, I said, hey, what do we need? And then the team was like, we need a copywriter. That's what we need. And I was like, I love copywriters. I really do. But I was like, no, we are missing like product marketing and we are missing content marketing. And then we need a copywriter, right? But like we needed all these foundational things before. And in our prep call, we talked about this, how there's two sides of marketing, right? It's like what you're selling, the story you're telling, and then how you add fuel to that fire, right? With growth marketing, paid marketing, the channels they are going to go and distribute that. And so the team was very bare bones, right? And so it was really about like how did I build both of these sides of marketing, the product marketing and content side, but also the growth marketing side as well. So that was a little bit of my thing of like thinking about what do I need to hire next. So product marketing was product marketing and content marketing and growth marketing. I hired right away, not right away. It took me a while to find the right people, but these were positions that I opened right away. And then eventually we decided that education was a big enough thing for us that needed a full-time person. So open that role as well and have been growing ever since.
Okay. And when you're thinking about, hiring, like you said, you explained that you're thinking about your team in two parts. You're thinking about somebody who does the content creation and somebody who does the fuel in that adds the fuel to whatever content that you create, right? How do you prioritize this hiring? Let's say if I were to say, Branca, you've got to hire one person only, who would you pick?
Yeah. So if I could hire one person only, to me, it would be a hybrid of a product marketer with a growth marketer angle.
Hmm.
And the reason I would do that, depending on the stage of the company you are, the some companies are born with like insane product market fit and they know exactly the story they're telling, and it's very easy. Most companies that I've seen, not only that I've worked at, but that I've seen, a lot of the problems, the marketing problems, stem from product marketing, stem from not being very clear on what your offering is, what your messaging is. And so having a product marketer that has this growth marketing angle that can both be defining the story with the founders or with the head of marketing, that is critical. And I would say don't add fuel to the fire before you get that right. Um, I've done that mistake many times in my career, and I think many people have.
Mm.
And I think that that's the one angle that I would do: a product marketer with a growth marketer angle. And then if you start feeling that either your story started getting like very clear and you have that, then it's time to add more fuel to the fire. And if that person starts being tapped out, then you can hire either another growth marketer or something like that. But that's probably what I would do.
Got it. And I'm sure when as you were mentioning when you started out, you're now a 12 people team, but then back then you were only 4 or 5 people, right?
Yeah.
And there's only so much that 4 or 5 people can do, but there is so much that needs to be done. So how do you bridge that gap? What did you do? Did you outsource some of this work? Did you bring external experts on? How did you go about that?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that in many different ways. So one thing is I'm a doer, right? Like I like doing things. So when I started with the 4 people, I was like, let's go and do a new series of events. Let's go and do this community event and let's do that. And I started like I think I got into the doing a little bit too fast. And then I very quickly realized that I had signed up myself to too much. And then I was having a really hard time like making time for hiring. And I knew I needed to hire. So I think I spent like a couple months on that like excitement of just doing things. And then I was like, oh no, I really need to make time for hiring. So I then took a little bit of a pause on some of the new things that I really wanted to do. And then the other thing is I really engage like contractors. So for example, when I started at Glide, we're a very horizontal product, right? People can build like amazing tools for their businesses with Glide. But as any horizontal product, it is very hard to market that. And it's very hard for people to understand because people are not usually looking for a platform. They're looking for like a solution to their problem. And I felt from the very beginning that the best story that we could tell with Glide was going to be with via customer stories. That was going to be really important. But at the time, as I said already, I didn't have a content marketer. I didn't have a copywriter. I didn't have a product marketer. And so I engaged, I think one of my first contractors was actually someone, Jessica Malnick. So she is amazing. And she worked with me on our first batch of customer stories. So that was really awesome. She did a really great job. I think we did a batch of like 4 to 6 to start with. And I remember the like sharing the first Google Doc drafts with the team. People were so excited to read those stories because people in the company, they love the product in the company that they're building, but when they read those stories with customers, they just get like so excited to see that.
Yeah.
And since then we've grown a lot, like that angle of customer stories. We not only do them writing, we do videos, we do short videos, we do a lot of things. But I am a big proponent of supplementing yourself with contractors and consultants when you don't have bandwidth or the expertise. So I think that's something we're going to cover a ton today. But yeah, I do a lot of that. But I would say if you are ever tasked with growing a marketing team, just make sure that like don't sign yourself up too early for too much, because then you get spread really thin and then you get all stressed out and you're like, you have to get yourself out of that situation.
Got it. So bring in external experts or contractors to fill in the gaps that your team can't do themselves. I think the next thing that I want to understand from you is the balance between these things, right? Of course, there is a internal capability, right? There are
Yeah.
folks on your team that can do stuff. But then there is stuff that needs to be done that they don't know how to do. So for example, you need really high quality videos made. You don't have an internal video person, so you naturally tend to gravitate towards outsourcing that, bring in an external person who's a video expert, get your videos done with them.
Yeah.
But let's say you do have internal capacity to say, for example, create these case studies, right? But your team doesn't have the bandwidth to create them, right?
Yeah.
But then they do. So you do need to go out there and either outsource or hire somebody else. Now my question is, how do you balance this work between what an internal person is going to do, what you're going to need an outsourced what you're going to need to help outsource the help for. So essentially trying to figure out, do I need to hire somebody to do X task? Of course, the tasks that your team can't do, you will naturally outsource. But the ones that your team can do, how do you split that between an external person and your internal team? And the second part follow up of that question is, how do you actually go out and find these contractors and freelance experts?
Yeah. Let me give a few examples of contractors and consultants we've worked with here at Glide. I think it's going to be pretty relevant. So a first example is the example that I just spoke about, Jessica, right? So I had a need writing customer stories. I didn't have that in-house yet. I didn't have time to do it myself because I had to hire a team and do a lot of other things. But I knew eventually I was going to have a content marketer on my team, right? So
Right.
she was basically like adding expertise and capacity to a time that I didn't have neither, right? To like do that, right? No one specialized on the team to do that at that time. So that's one context that I like to get those people. And then if it starts becoming something, in that case, I already had a clear vision and the headcount to hire that full time. But I didn't have that person yet. So sometimes if you find yourself in that situation and you start finding yourself like needing that person on a recurring basis, it's time to think like, do you need a full-time person on your team doing that?
Mm.
Is there someone who could do that? So that's one way. Another way, for example, to your point, sometimes there's very deep expertise in one area that you need, and that is temporary. So, for example, we had some of our marketing campaigns and efforts and programs of last year. They really did a lot around. We wanted to do a lot of illustrations, and so on those illustrations, we worked with like a very famous and very amazing like illustrator to create like an illustration set for us that then was spread across like many different types of things. So that's another way. My life cycle marketer, Michael Roberts, is amazing. He's a contractor with us, but for over 12 months. He's amazing. So that's a different angle. So the thing with Michael is he is extremely knowledgeable, right? And he doesn't want to go work full time for anyone. He likes his life as a having multiple clients, etc. But I know that finding someone that is as knowledgeable as he is really hard. So I am willing to have Michael to be on my team on a part-time capacity because I know I'm getting a lot of the expertise, right? And then there's another way that I like to work with contractors and consultants as well, which is they're very deep and I want to accelerate the learning within my team. So, for example, on the SEO front, SEO is a beast, right? I've been around SEO for like a really long time, and it changes all the time. And you really need to be like a really big expert and super deep to know what's happening. And I have a lot of people on my team that touch SEO in different ways. Product marketing touches SEO, content marketing touches SEO, growth marketing, all of that, right? But we had some specific SEO projects that we wanted to go from like 0 to 100 really fast. And I knew my team could figure that out in a few months, or we could like bring a really deep expert and then like accelerate our learning. So that's
Mm.
another way that I like to work with consultants as well is a little bit of like an advising capacity. Usually those people are very experienced and also expensive. But I think all of these people that I've mentioned right now, they're very worthwhile. But you have to know kind of like what you need at what level. And so I find, you know, just talking about contractors and consultants, my background, if I think about like 10 years ago, contractors weren't seen as a positive thing. It was almost like, oh, this side work that like no one wants to do. Like, let's get a contractor, or like someone is going on parental leave. Let's get a contractor. And what I find fascinating, and I'm really excited about people that are doing consulting now, is it really allows people to be like really deep and niche experts in their areas of expertise, right? Whether you're doing like AI for marketing, or whether you're like an SEO expert, or whether you're like really good in like content strategy. And because now everyone has a platform like LinkedIn and many different places to like market themselves and create networks, those people can find work a lot easier and then come in and out, and have like many different clients. I've seen some consultants that are really amazing and they're like, look, I know this is not going to be a long term thing. So I will work with you for 3 months. In the 3 months, this is what we're going to do together. We're going to go from A to B and B to C. And then at the end of this, we're going to part ways. It's not going to be that awkward moment. So I really admire like all the different models that exist right now. And I can confirm to everyone watching this live or later that there are many different models. I think you have to pick the one that you most want to do, the one that you get most excited about, and find the right like marketing leaders that will want to hire people like that. Like I have a lot of people like that that have been working with me on a glide. Like I think we're kind of like in certainly more than 10 people that we've worked with in this capacity so far.
Fantastic. And my other question was, how did you end up finding them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot, I will say the first, there's a couple things. So the first few are a lot around recommendations. Like as marketers and go-to-market people, we always have these communities we're a part of, or friends we have that we text or things like that, right? So referrals like that are often really helpful. But what happened to me as well is I started actually getting more active on LinkedIn this year, and I started like really following people and understanding what people's expertise were. And that was really interesting because in following people and eventually connecting with people, for example, Jess Cook, she spoke at the conference yesterday. She's amazing. And I met her like that. I was following her content. I thought she was really good. And then eventually I went and I reached out to her, try to hire her. And then she decided to do something else. But it kind of like I start making these connections. And so what I do now, because I've been developing these relationships, it's almost like this is like you're building your bank account, your like relationship roster with all of these people. And I make contact with people, I talk to them, even though it might not be the right time. And if I find someone is like amazing at doing something, I'll just be like, when the time is right, I'll know I'll have to come back to this person. This was also the same thing with like Justin Simon. He focuses on like content distribution, and I was a really big follower and believer. And I didn't have something to work with him right away. And I kept him in mind. I kept him in mind. And then when the time was right, we worked together. So it's really around like keeping our relationships alive. But there are a lot of those finding contractors that is happening in like private communities, a lot of it happening like that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. Okay, now we've spoken a little bit about contractors and sort of expanding your team externally, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about how you'd actually go about hiring in-house folks, right? Um,
Yes.
for a lot of teams that are that small, like perhaps, and I'm just assuming this, that when you join Glide, it's highly likely that given you've got a small marketing team, you were the person doing the hiring. There wasn't an external HR person who was doing the recruitment.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your hiring process and how you actually go about doing the hiring.
Yeah. So I am very hands-on, and you're right. Like at Glide at the beginning, I didn't have anyone to help. And so I had to do it all on my own. And a very interesting thing, and this was very unique to the timing of when I joined Glide. It was just the year after like COVID was starting to like slow down. And what started happening is the first few rounds of layoffs in big tech companies had started. It wasn't the wave that it happened after, but like a couple had happened. What the very interesting thing that happened is people are holding on to their jobs like there's no tomorrow at that time. And so trying to hire was extremely difficult because people were like, I have my job, I'm secure, I'm not going to go and try to go for like a not well-known startup at the time, to go do that. And so it was extremely hard. So not only it's hard because I was a solo person, but it was hard because of that particular time. But because of that, it made me a much better recruiter because I had to go like it was recruiting at like extra level of difficulty. But
Mhm.
I like hard things, so that wasn't a problem. So I think the first thing that I'll say if you're hiring internally on your team is just first like be very first is like get a very clear understanding with your boss, whether it's the CEO or someone else, on how much you can hire. Because if someone tells you you can hire 5 people, you will
Mhm.
think about a team of a different makeup. If someone tells you you can only hire 1 or 2 people, you're going to think about a very different makeup because you have to think about like all the competences that you need and the priorities you have, and then you have to staff for that, right? So that would be
Right.
my first question: is get very clear on how much you can hire. And if it's only one, it's only one, but then at least you know that. Once you know that, be very clear on what you want from that role. Are you looking for a product marketer? Are you looking for more of a growth marketer? Are you looking for a content marketer? You have like spend time on the job description, but like really thinking about it. A lot of people just go and like they copy paste, and probably now they probably go to ChatGPT and get a job description like that. But it is very important to, in my opinion, for you to be very clear on what you want and not stuff your job description with a bunch of random, responsibilities that it just mean nothing, right? So
Mhm.
think about that because that will make your hiring a lot easier. Then once you publish that job somewhere on your website, I will tell you they're not going to come unless you're like at a very hot startup or big tech
Right.
company. People are not going to come. So you have to go and source those people yourself. That was the case for me. Like I was getting actually some people, but it wasn't like a flood of high quality candidates. So I had to go find a lot of different strategies. So one strategy that I developed here at Glide and I found really successful and highly recommend for people is If you're hiring for a role that is somewhat specialized, like PMM or growth marketing or content marketing, a first thing that I recommend is like find the communities and influencers in that type of role and ask if they have job boards. It can post if they can post a job for you. A lot of the communities right now, like Sharebird, Product Marketing Alliance, Superpath, they have job boards that you can pay, I
Right.
think, $100, $200 to post a job. That gets you in front of a lot of the right types of people, the right profiles very quickly. So that's one thing, find those people. The other thing that I did along the way is develop relationships with influencers. I developed when I was hiring, I hired two PMMs here at Glide. And the second time I ended up developing a lot of relationships with PMM influencers. They have their own communities, they do coaching for PMMs, and they actually promoted my jobs. And then I got also a flood of really highly
Right.
qualified people. So these are two strategies that I recommend. When this is not working, the other thing that I've done is really like be a salesperson. I went to LinkedIn, scraped LinkedIn, found people that I found had interesting profiles, whether it's because a company of a similar business or something else. And I then went to cold call them. And I have my little LinkedIn intro message. I didn't use any of the LinkedIn premium stuff. I would just send a connection request saying one specific thing that I was impressed in their background and then who I was. And then I'm like, I would love to talk to you. I got a lot of positive responses on that, met a lot of amazing people. And a couple people actually on my team I hired like that. I was like chasing them. There's a guy, we always laugh, Seppi on my team. I chased him for 3 months. Like I connected with him. He replied. We were supposed to connect. He went to Mexico for a trip. And then I followed up with him 3 months later. Like I didn't give up, right? Until I finally hired him over Christmas break. So you really have to be very resourceful if you're like in a small team and don't have a lot of help. You cannot just wait for people to come to you. It's not going to
Right.
happen. So you have to find the right places where these people are, get people from your team. So these are the things that I highly recommend.
Hmm. Okay, so let's say you put out this job post, you've posted on for a content marketer, you've posted on
Yeah.
Superpath, you've
Yeah.
reached out to a bunch of influencers, you've got them posting about the job, and now you've
Yes.
got this pile of resumes in your inbox.
Yes.
What do you do next?
Oh gosh. I am laughing because I hired for a position this summer and I got 519 resumes. So
Well
it
done,
is a
too.
very it is a very different hiring right now. I would just say for anyone who doesn't have a lot of experience with hiring, or maybe those who do, if you were hiring like 2 years ago, it was one thing, and if you're hiring now, it's a totally different game. So
Absolutely.
when I find myself with that pile, when it's not 519, right? What I often do is like it's really screening resumes. It's like finding the ones that are the maybes or the yeses. And that's the first thing that I do. A shameless plug here. We actually just introduced an AI agent that is a resume screener. This was not part of the script, by the way. But we actually with Glide
There was no
because I
script, Branca.
there's no script.
There
But
was no.
with the because I actually did 519 this summer, with Glide, it's such a flexible tool that we created this AI agent that you can upload resumes and you upload the job description. And then you just basically say what you want to say, like you're talking to like a recruiter. And then you upload all the resumes and then it scores them for you like high, medium, low. And I will tell you, we hadn't created this tool this summer when I screened 519. And I really wish we had because it does that for you
Mhm.
automatically. But, anyways, the tool aside, the agent aside, um, that's the first thing. And then when I find my maybes and my yeses, the yeses, it's very clear. I usually schedule like a first very quick call with them, 15 or 30 minutes. And I often reach out to them and say, hey, thank you so much for applying. I would love to have a first very brief conversation to see if there's mutual fit.
Mhm.
Usually in that conversation, you have a very clear sense of like your comp expectation is somewhat aligned, right?
Right.
So I've had, for example, I honestly had conversations like this where like I was hiring actually sometime someone for a community role, and someone very talented said, "Hey, I'm actually at a 250K range," and I was like, great for
Oops.
you. but
Mhm.
totally out of my range, right? And so that's really good for you to have that first very brief conversation. So you're like, okay, there's a mutual fit here. There's no red flags in terms of their fit, your fit. You go. The maybes, I usually spend a little bit more time because I always like to give people that are not screaming yes a chance. Also because often you don't have that many screaming yeses, right, you. So there are
Absolutely.
resumes that you have to spend a little more time and you're like, okay, well, this person, maybe they have a more well-balanced role. How am I going to do this? But anyway, so once you figure out the people, then I go to this very brief interview.
Mm.
A mistake that I've made in the past that I want to make sure that people don't do it again is don't do homework assignments too early. Okay. This early stage is not, in my opinion and experience, not the stage to do homework assignments yet. We have done people doing like a quick loom around a project that they have done or something at work that they're proud of. I think that that is totally fair at this stage, but I
It's
wouldn't
just
do
the
homework
beginning, yeah.
assignments. Yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do homework assignments yet. So then usually I like to do a panel of like two people in the company. So depending on the role, it will be a different panel. But for example, if it's going to be a product marketer, I think it's really important for them to talk to the product manager and the growth marketer. They're going to work very closely with. If it's
Mm.
content marketing, it's a different set, right? Anyways, so I usually like to do this panel. We try to keep our interviews to 30 minutes because we want to be very respectful of people's times. And then, but if after the panel people are good, I usually, that's the time that I like to give a homework assignment.
Got it.
And I learned a lot from Emily Kramer, the Market One community. I actually took one of her trainings, and she actually had some really nice examples of homeworks. But she has two principles that I live by. So it's homework assignments have to be short. They have to be like 2 hours, 3 hours at most, and then they cannot be used for like as actual work. So for example, you're not going to tell someone like write me a bunch of social media posts and then you're actually going to use them to post, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I think these two things are very important. If you ever find yourself writing a very long assignment for people, or if you receive an assignment that is really long, I would say just see if that's a little bit of a red flag, because it might be that someone is trying to make you do free work or something. And I've heard a lot in my communities, people like complain about that. But then we do the hiring. And then I usually have more conversations with people along the way. I always like to check in after they have interviews with people. And then I often have a last chat to understand how they're feeling, how they're excited. And we're still small enough at Glide that everyone we hire talks to our CEO. Usually they talk to our CEO. And if everything is checking out, then we proceed to offer and we move really fast. So I can really go from, by the time I have an enough pool of candidates to making an offer, I can do like 2 weeks. So really the part for me that takes a really long time is the sourcing of candidates.
Got it. And since you were talking about assignments, folks, just for your benefit, there are two sample assignments that Branca has shared with all of you today. If you scroll a little down from your chat icon, there in the resources section, there's one great example for a content marketing assignment, another one for a product marketing assignment. So you can take a look at both of those and grab yourself some notes there. Branca, in terms of assignments, and I know there's a lot of chatter about this on all marketing communities, especially with
Yeah.
within content marketing roles, because I know that folks get asked to write something fresh enough and more times. Like you don't want to see somebody's older samples. You ask them, "Can you write me an article on X?" And I would pay you for that, right? Have you ever considered or done paid assignments? And what advice do you have for folks who are thinking about doing that? And what do you actually do with this assignment that you've paid somebody for? Can you use it?
Great question. I have considered, really considered, because in one of the positions that I was hiring for, I wanted someone to write something for us.
Mhm.
Um, and I considered paying. I actually went to my communities. I have my own communities of marketers, and I said, "Hey guys, I'm considering paying like real money, what they would get." And it was very interesting. People were pretty split on whether I should pay or not, right? And I was like, I'm not necessarily going to use it, but I actually do just want to see how they would do if they had a little more time, and I don't want them to do that for free. I ended up
Mm.
deciding not to do it. I did not do it. I would consider it again. If for some reason it's a specific role that I felt like I wanted people to spend more time, but I would just make sure that like I pay them enough of a rate. But in my experience, like I wouldn't send assignments to more than like 5 people. 5 people is the max, right? 2 or 3 is the ideal, but not more than 5.
Got it. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we've mapped out your entire process from figuring out who you want to hire to how you go about creating that pipeline for candidates to whether you want to hire internal or external, as well as what that hiring process looks like. I'm just going to take a very quick second to see if there are any questions in the chat. I know there was one from Heather earlier on. I'm just going to bring that up. And in case there's something that you want to add to that, Branca, I know
Yeah.
you briefly talked about this. I'll just let you read that question out loud.
Yeah. So it's a great question. And I've certainly found this before. When you have a really small team, I would say that the main thing that is hard in marketing is the fact that like we have an almost unlimited amount of programs and channels that we can run with. And my biggest advice is always to look in like things that like are not giving you a lot of return, or feel like, the investment of effort is just too much for the return you're getting. So like if you are very small team, I would look at that first. Is there something that you can cut totally? The other way that I found really useful is to really start with like potentially contract to hire. Like it's very useful to do that. Or I found really interesting to kind of like do um 3-month projects with someone, see if that motion makes sense. And then you have a case of like, hey, this is making a lot of sense. Then you go back to your leadership and say, look, if we had someone full time or this contractor to stay with us for longer, this is what I would get. I always try to leave like about 10% of my budget for contractor experimentation. So it's
Mhm.
like, we're going to need help in product marketing now. Yeah, great question about interns. I've had 2 interns here at Glide. Um, both actually, I didn't have open roles. They actually reached out to us, one to me directly and one to our CO, and they were like, "We love what Glide is doing. We would love to do an internship." Both of these we did paid internships, but what I did is I did very specific projects for them. So the first one was Emma. She was incredible. She started at the same time I did. She was the one that reached out to our CEO. And I always like to do customer segmentations when I start in a new job, so I can get a pretty good sense of the customer base. And so both of us, we did our customer segmentation. It's something I have a lot of experience doing. And so she came in for that project, and I found that was really useful because at the end she delivered the project. It was very good. She helped me a ton, and then she had a great experience, and she used that internship to get subsequent jobs. Right. The other intern that we got, he was very focused. We were at the time focusing on like onboarding and activation and better understanding the things that we could do. So he did a lot of quantitative data analysis. He did a lot of interviews, and then he did some recommendations. I don't have experience with like getting interns to just kind of like do a regular job, like a regular part of the job. I usually get interns to do projects. Hopefully that answers your questions. I know there are different strategies here for interns. You're
Got it.
welcome.
Excellent. Are there any other questions that folks wanted to ask Branca before we sign off? Okay, I guess that's that.
Awesome.
Branca, thank you so very much. This has been so much fun. I had a great time chatting with you both today as well as during our preps. Thank you so much for sharing all of those very, very practical ways of scaling your marketing team, regardless of how small you are or how big you are, and sort of building on that. To everybody in the audience, thank you so much for staying on. I'm now very quickly just going to also call up George and Kevin to sort of say our goodbyes to everybody, because this was our last session for Full Circle 2024. Folks, you've been an absolutely fantastic audience. I know that there's some people in the audience who've been with us from the very beginning, from session 1 yesterday, and you've sort of stuck it out all these hours staying up with us. Thank you so very much for sharing all of your questions, all of your insights. You've been a fantastic bunch. And I also want to very quickly let George and Kevin say their thank yous as well.
Yeah, first of all, Branca, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I think you answered so many questions that we get asked really often at the B2B Playbook, and just don't have the depth that you have. And so I will definitely be sending people your way in the future when we come across those questions. So thank you for that. To the audience, you guys have been excellent. Thank you for all your really thoughtful questions. Thank you for sticking with us. It was 2 really action-packed days, and thank you for getting behind this event. When Pallavi first put the idea to me, maybe 2 months ago, I said, you were crazy to think that we can do this so quickly. And she has been unbelievable at helping us do so much legwork and get this together. So huge thank you to my co-host. Huge thank you to Kevin as well. The audience, and of course all the speakers. I think that we are definitely going to make this a yearly event.
Yes.
I definitely just want to echo George's thoughts. Branca, thank you for that session. Lots of learnings, lots of insights. Certainly things that I've personally experienced as well in the hiring process. So very much looking forward to tapping into your expertise in the future as well. As George said, a huge lift from Pallavi over the last couple of days, but the last few months as well. So much has gone in behind the scenes to pull this conference together. So thank you very much. George for as well being crazy enough to say yes to this whole thing and then pulling us along for the ride. And thanks to everyone again for attending. Hopefully you're walking away with some actionable strategies that you can implement right away.
Absolutely. And we will be sending over the recordings so you can relive all of this. And if you've missed out on any of the sessions, you'll be able to catch them in the recordings. Feel free to share them, post them on LinkedIn, whatever you loved, whatever you didn't. And like George said, we're hoping to make this an annual thing. So we look forward to seeing you back for Full Circle 2025 as well. On that note, thank you very much, everybody. This has been an absolute blast. Thanks again, Branca. Thank you, George. And thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.